Good morning, Cedars Church family, coming at you again today with another word of encouragement to start your day. Well, there is a lot going on right now in this world. We are dealing with the global pandemic, and we've had an earthquake today. There has been other earthquakes and tsunamis and locusts, a variety of different things that have been happening all over the world. And so it's either a page right out of Revelation or everything's hitting at once. Whichever it is creating for a lot of people a lot of fear and anxiety. If you just go onto the internet right now, there's a lot of people that are just looking, what do I need to be afraid of? Fear. How do I deal with fear? How do I deal with anxiety? These are topping out a lot of the searches right now on the internet. The other day I was looking in my finch cage. We have a big finch cage out in my backyard, and I looked in the finch cage, and one of my finches was dead on the ground. I know. On top of everything else, my bird died, but one of my finches was there dead, and it got me thinking about Matthew chapter 10. And Jesus is talking to the people, and he is comforting the people. He's expressing to the people a very important statement. He says, "Are not two sparrows sold for a penny?" And he's saying, they're cheap, aren't they? Aren't sparrows cheap? They're so cheap you can get two of them for what he was saying was for a 16th of a denarius, or basically half an hour's wage. So they're cheap birds. And if they're cheap birds, he says, not one of them, for these cheap birds, not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. Meaning God knows, even for these insignificant little birds, God knows when one of them dies. God knew when my bird died. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't wondering like which angel wasn't on duty to watch over the birds. He knew already that my bird had passed away. He says, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Do you know that God knows you so well? Jesus is saying God knows you so well that he can number the hairs on your head. He knows you that intimately that he could, that they're not like, I know how many there are, like that's number one, that's number two, that's number three. He knows you that personally, that intimately. And then he says, fear not, therefore. I love that. Fear not. Fear not, therefore. You are more valuable than many sparrows. These cheap birds, God knows everything about them. He knows when one falls to the ground. He says, I know everything about you. I know the number of hairs on your head. I know, he says in another psalm, I know the number of days that you'll be alive. I know everything about you. I formed you in your mother's womb. I know all there is to know about you. He says, so don't be afraid. You're more important than the sparrows. If he knows when an insignificant bird dies, he knows everything about you. He knows everything that's going to happen to you. He's aware and he's watching. And this seems to be a very common theme even throughout the Bible. Why? Because for all of human history, we've been afraid. We've been afraid of people getting sick. We've been afraid of our finances. Am I making enough money? We've been afraid of armies coming to come and get us and come attack us. We've been afraid of a great many things. Will my life simply not turn out like I hope it will? Are my enemies going to come get me? What's going to happen in my life? And it makes us afraid. It makes us anxious. There seems to be four things that God wants to tell us over and over and over again in the Bible. And that is, number one, I know you. I want you to know, he says, I know you. Number two, I've got you. I've got you. I'm here to protect you. Number three is, don't be afraid. Fear not. Don't be afraid. Number four, just trust me. If you trust me, then you don't have to be afraid of these things. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing bad is ever going to happen to us. But what we can know is if we trust in him, if we put our faith in him, if we rely upon him for our salvation, for our saving, then what we can know is that without a doubt, no matter what, he will see us through to the end, and then we get to be with him for all eternity in perfect, perfect peace. A couple other verses that I found that just kind of roll with this. Isaiah chapter 12, verse 2, behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and I will not be afraid. For the Lord God is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. Psalm 27:1, David writes, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold or the refuge of my life. He is the one I can run to and be safe from. Of whom shall I be afraid? Psalm 27:1. I love this one. Joshua 1:9 starts off the book saying to Joshua, be strong and be courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And, he says repeatedly to Joshua, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged. Don't be afraid. You only say that to someone who's afraid and discouraged. Otherwise, you'd say something else. He says this repeatedly to Joshua. He must have been exceedingly afraid of the task that was there before him. But he says, don't be afraid. I will be with you. I will go with you wherever you go. And then finally, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. I love this, Isaiah 26:3. You will keep, you will guard, you will preserve, you will protect. God will protect those into perfect peace. And this is a cool word. It's shalom. He will keep you. He will protect you, guard you into a perfect peace. Shalom is a perfect peace. I mentioned that just a second ago, that we will be able to spend eternity with him in perfect peace. But the kingdom of heaven is such that it is what we get to experience with him for all eternity, and yet he lets us experience it even now. So he will keep us in perfect peace, those whose minds are steadfast. That means not moved. If I will not move, but instead if I will trust him, then he will protect me in perfect peace. That's such an important word for us today. If we will trust him, he says, I know you. I know you. I know all about you. I've got you. And he's got you because he wants to have you. He loves you and he will protect you. So he says, don't be afraid. Just trust me. Whatever happens today, whatever's coming your way, trust in him. He's got you. There's nothing that can come against you that can take his love away from you. That's some good encouragement for today. God bless you guys. Have yourselves a great day. And remember, you are loved.